Sounds good.
There we go. No idea if anyone is even here yet. No, a few people are. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
No idea if anyone is even... Let me know if Badmouse is too loud or too quiet and I can bring it up or down.
Hello. 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 Hello.
Your link on
Hello.
YouTube is /Saxy1. You know that?
Oh god, it's reverberating. It's like 10 seconds out of tune.
Oh yeah, you just mute the live stream.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Otherwise you'll just hear it repeat.
Hang on.
Alright.
Yeah.
Someone's saying he's a bit too quiet, so I'll bring you up a bit.
Okay, lovely.
That should do it. I also want to find that picture of the goat and the mouse. There it is. I want to set that as the thumbnail of the video, because that's cute.
Oh god, it feels like two people are talking to me.
What?
What's going on? Oh, hold on. I had two links open. Right, there we go.
Oh.
I'm all good. I don't know why I opened up two links, just so I can read the chat at the same time.
Alright, yeah. You,
Okay, right. Sorry, we're all good now.
yeah. Okay.
Great. Okay, so, yeah, do you want to talk about what we're talking about today?
Yes. So, we are like influencers, I guess. I suppose. We're like educators. People who talk about...
Edutainers.
We talk about serious topics from time to time, and we, we try to teach people things. Right? Is that what we do? Or are we just in it for the money?
I hate that word. Influencers.
Influences. Well, we do influence people. We can't deny that.
Yeah, we do. That's true. I suppose... I don't know. It's... The biggest problem, I suppose, because we are quite proper left-wing, and then also we're doing this, it's part-time jobs or whatever, is that there's always that risk of delving too much into the money aspect of things, and that's the awkward thing when you're left-wing, is that it shouldn't be like that. It should be more how... I can't think. Oh, this is not going to go down well.
No, it's alright.
No, God, that's not a good way to start it. Oh, no.
Well, the point of... Like, why did you create your channel?
It was really just coincidence, really, that I made my channel. I made it just because I thought I could... Well, I started off, as you probably know, I started off right-wing, and I thought, well, I'll just make it. I've always wanted to do something on YouTube. It's fun. I just made videos basically just to talk about my views to begin with, and then eventually it delved into more stronger politics.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you are left-wing, there's definitely something I've been thinking about, which is that, in a sense, you could almost say LeftTube is now really starting to become proper politics. Proper, real politics on YouTube, as far as I can see anyway. I don't see people making enormous response videos to us anymore, or at least they're not really very impactful.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you just make one video about anything, let alone feminism, people are going to just jump on you.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays, I really don't see that anymore. And beyond that, we've gone beyond simply standard response videos. We're now getting into proper ideas, which is great. But along with that, I think there comes a sort of plateau in terms of how forward-thinking our views are. And I think as time goes on, sadly, I just got this feeling that LeftTube is just going to become very, very sanitized. and we're not going to be really talking about. We're still going to be talking about the issues, and we're still going to be the face of people who want to change things. But I've been thinking a lot about trying to move LeftTube sort of into the next level rather than sort of getting stuck in the mud. And I don't know, I am sort of seeing that from some people, as much as I hate to say, I won't say any names, but I don't know, I am seeing a sort of trend towards that way, and it is sort of a bit scary at times.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing with YouTube is you make money from it, and you notice, like even subconsciously, you notice that certain things get you more views and more money, and you know, and if you get approached by sponsors, you know, you have to tone down your extremist views, otherwise they'll distance themselves from you. Even if
that's no sponsor. No, it's absolutely true. Like, if you listen to people, what's their names, like Wendover Productions and Real Life Law and everything, and they're just like, they've got their transitions into the sponsor just down to a T, just so smooth.
Yes.
They're just like, you can sign up to Squarespace, blah blah blah. Just sounds like a robot. Never going to go down that route. I will resign from YouTube if I'm ever forced to do that.
You know, it's funny. Many YouTubers have said similar things. Not saying that you're lying, but like
I'm probably talking shit.
Like the one example that I remember is Aaron Hansen, who is of Game Grumps fame. He said like many years ago that, you know, if I ever create a Let's Play channel, just kill me. And then he went on to create like the biggest Let's Play channel on YouTube. And that's like what he's known for now. And like, it's hard to be genuine as a YouTuber, I think. It's because it makes you vulnerable, doesn't it? To put yourself out there.
You are always just balancing that kind of edge between money and real politics. And I think it's just simply because I'm lazy, I guess, that I haven't really concentrated too much on like the analytics or when you should release a video, what kind of video you should release, which I think's I'm quite fortunate in that regard. I haven't really, even when people have said like, oh, we really like these videos, or I saw a video that was doing particularly well, I've never really sort of gone like, oh yeah, I need to make that video. I've always just sort of made whatever I really want. And I hope I can keep doing that in the future. In a sense, what Patreon does allow you to do, in some ways, is it does allow you that. Contra told me this a while ago. It does allow you to sort of take a few liberties rather than just relying on the YouTube view count.
Yeah,
but
I mean it does. There's also like I felt. Almost the opposite when I started my Patreon channel is because when it's YouTube, it's like, yeah, I get money from it, but like I don't get monthly paychecks or anything because like you need to reach a certain threshold of like ad revenue, and it's like they don't that money comes from YouTube, not from viewers, right? No one pays to watch my videos, but with Patreon, it's like, wow, there are people who are giving me their money. They're probably expecting something from me.
Yeah.
That, I mean, it puts pressure on you because then you're like, well, what is it that they want? What kind of videos do they want to see? And then maybe you feel like, well, I don't really want to make those kinds of videos, but those are the videos that my patrons want to see, and it gets stressful, I think.
For me, I find that the Patreon thing sort of gets you to make videos, push them out a bit more, and especially like over this month, I've had operations. I've had to take like time in bed and stuff, so I haven't really had much time to do my videos that much. And oh god, there's another thing that tends to just be upon my thing with just YouTube in general. You tend to sort of start becoming more and more. You heard of that term, flanderization?
No.
it's what happens to Ned Flanders. He started off as he wasn't really Christian. He was just sort of just a church-going family man who would be a good neighbor to Homer. But then by season 20 or whatever, he's now turned into just this raging religious zealot. And I noticed that definitely actually this month, because I was going to do a video on Jordan Peterson, and I thought, this will be a good video because I can talk about just an annoying argument he talks about, which is the Pareto distribution, and I found out just so much great stuff about that. But when I looked at the way I'd written my script, and it was like, I think it's getting for like 30 minutes or whatever, and it was just going to be impossible to just make in the way it was designed, and just incredibly structured, basically just sort of hyper edited mess. And I just thought eventually, I just came to the conclusion that's not really what I want to make. That's just it's just overboard. And so that's why I had to just take a step back and say, okay, scrap the project, we're going to do something that sort of just goes back a little bit. And I just thought, let's just release this video on just some thoughts I basically had. That's why the video that I recently released on communism is a little bit vague, but it's basically just to sort of reinforce that idea of communism. And I just thought, I think that's more because we have that accumulation now on YouTube, the left-wing accumulation we've built up over the past 3 years or whatever.
What do you mean by that?
It's not like the old days anymore, and we have the ability now to sort of talk about our views more stridently. I think that's something I hope we can do in the future.
You mean that LeftTube has grown over the years?
Well, yeah, LeftTube has definitely grown. I mean, back when 2000, when did I start? I started making left YouTube videos 4 years ago. And back when that happened, there were even in 2016, to be honest, there were maybe H-Bomber Guy had 10,000 subscribers at that point. And he was up there. And I had 1,500 subscribers or whatever. And that was sort of LeftTube. I think Cameron, Libertarian Socialist Rants, and Anarcho-Pack, they had a sort of, I think he had 30, Anarcho-Pack had 3,000 or 4,000. And that was sort of it. And fast forward just 2 years after that, and you have dozens and dozens, reaching some of them 50, 60, 100,000, 300,000 subscribers. And that's what has happened in the past few years. And it's just amazing how far it's come. Never really would have expected it.
Yeah. But also, I mean, we mentioned it earlier, but when we measure success by subscriber count, it's easy to get lost,
Yeah.
And sort of become just softer leftists.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I have definitely noticed that, especially on my Discord. A lot of people have been talking about it. Hi to everybody on my Discord if you're listening. I have noticed a lot of people have sort of been talking about how, certain people are. I don't. It's awkward talking about this because obviously, a lot of people on LeftTube are my friends and stuff, and I love them all. But yeah, there does just come the point at times where you sort of have to just think, this is the good question, why we're doing the discussion, what is our purpose, what is our, in a sense, duty on the left as YouTubers. There's a lot of people, I think, recently, especially, they've been talking about the idea of, let's have a breadcon, or whatever. I think even John Green said he wanted to get people together to do a sort of left-wing video conference. And at first it's all, nice and great. It's let's all get together. It'd be great. And the more I see it ultimately, I can't help but just feel a bit cynical about it because... No, that's my phone. I can't help but just feel a bit cynical because is this really what we should be doing? Shouldn't we be building a party? Shouldn't we be getting out there and demonstrating? I mean, to be, what obviously has happened over the weekend is nothing short of just astounding, with the stream and everything. But it's sort of stuff like that I think would be better, rather than just let's just have a lot of fun. We need to get out on the streets a bit more. I say that seeing as I haven't really participated in much recently, but I do just think this push towards Redcon or whatever. I can't help but feel cynical whenever I hear about it. It's not really the path we should be going.
I mean, it's an interesting question of, it's a line that I think I've heard a lot from mainly older communists who say that, if all you're doing is sitting on the internet and arguing with people, you're not going to get anywhere. And to an extent, I agree with that. Debates on the internet are essentially pointless. But also, the internet is important, and it does influence the way people think, and it does have an impact on the real world. It doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Absolutely, yeah.
So there is a balance to be struck. We can't just be out.
Balance to everything.
Yeah. So, you mentioned a bit about why are we on YouTube in the first place? What is the purpose?
It's a really hard question to ask when you think about it.
Yeah.
Because it started off as just a sort of fun thing to do in your spare time, and then it becomes a source of income for you, and then just become more sanitized and flanderized over time. I think ultimately what it is education. It's not going to be an enormous amount more than education, or having fun or whatever, creating the aesthetic or whatever. But if it is just going to be education, then I think we should start to become a little bit more humble about it and start saying, if it is education, then let's focus more on that. Let's start talking more about theory. Let's stop going towards all these like nice, cool looking. Hang on, what am I talking about? Let's stop focusing on the memes too much and the discourse too much, maybe, and start focusing more on the ideas. That is definitely with the videos that I have upcoming. It's talking more about awareness and ideas instead of simply. Need to think up some new words. Instead of just having fun, I guess.
Yeah.
Instead of getting into the battle and the discourse and the response videos, which, to be perfectly honest, we are moving away a lot more. Contra, I don't really think has ever necessarily announced herself as a socialist or anything. She's just there doing, education on social issues, like what she specializes in, which is, gender dysphoria and things relating to gender and so forth.
Yeah.
So everyone likes to have a go at Contra, but it's when you, I hate to say that, when you do get on YouTube, everybody does ultimately want a piece of you.
Yes.
Everyone wants to have a go. So I completely get where I completely get why someone like Contra would be frustrated just having 100 faces, 100 mouths yelling at her all the time. But I don't know. There's always an area of truth within any criticism. So
that's the thing with, let alone putting your political views out there once is, damning in its own right. But when your YouTube channel is entirely political, everyone is after you. But you also have to learn to take criticism, and you have to learn to separate the criticism from just the blind hatred.
Exactly.
Because if we can't ever take criticism, and we can't ever listen to the people that disagree with us, we can't ever grow as people. Our views can't develop.
Yeah, no, it's true. I was watching your videos when I think you said that in one of your many Q&A videos, um, and yeah, you were talking about like how that was around the time when I was sort of just thinking, well, let's just all get along, let's just all be friends, let's not really have arguments. And you were saying the opposite. You were saying, no, come on, we need to debate these ideas, and that's where I stand right now. I'm like, no, we should open the doors of the party headquarters.
Yes.
And allow
I think
all criticism to go.
I've said a few times that I hate debates, but I love discussions. Because in debates there are, it's like a sport. There are players and there are winners and there are losers. In the discussion, there's mutual respect, and there aren't winners or losers. Just two people who discuss, and then they leave the discussion, both of them better off for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, I think that's a little bit of the problem with left unity, which is good. We should be, comrades. But we can't stop, criticizing each other's ideologies.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can't just pretend that we agree with
isn't
each
just
other.
a four-letter word or whatever. It's I don't know. A certain individual on Twitter caption. They what should I say? They just out of context quoted me saying I used to believe in left unity when I was scared to debate people, but that wasn't the full extent of it. I went on. Left unity is not. People just have a rosy idea of left unity sometimes, and you can't just think that we're going to get along, because we are going to have to talk about those things.
Yes.
And I think it's something that you said actually, which is that if you're going to be still debating these things when you've got to also fight against invading forces or whatever, forces of reaction, that's going to be difficult.
Yes, I mean that's a different thing entirely. There's a time and there's a place for discourse.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you've started your little, People's Republic of whatever stan, and the US is invading, now is not the time for the anarchists and the Marxists to be having a civil war over whether to have a state or not.
Exactly.
Like these things can be postponed usually, hopefully.
Goddamn hopefully.
A little bit of what I wanted to talk about was socialism in the world today, and kind of specifically in the Western world. Like, what does... I mean, as someone who's not British, but as I do keep up with British politics, but as you are British, I think that you're more qualified to answer. What exactly does Corbyn mean for the British left?
I would just like to say, first of all, I know absolutely nothing about Brexit. I have stayed completely clear of that, so Nobody asked me anything about Brexit. But what is your question about Corbyn and what he means for the British left?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it's similar, I suppose, if you were saying American politics with AOC and Bernie. But yes. I guess maybe with Corbyn, British politics seems to be a little bit less pop than say American politics would, or whatever other kind of politics. So Corbyn does seem to be, at least to me anyway, he does seem to be a bit more genuine. But I can't deny the fact that so did many another politician. And we have to just understand that he's not going to be at all anyway revolutionary. He's just simply going to be social democrat.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever him and McDonnell and Abbott and whatever say about how they're socialists or whatever. Am I filled with confidence that they would institute any kind of socialist thing? No, I can't. John McDonnell, even himself, tries to avoid labelling as a socialist or as a Marxist or whatever. So that does not fill me with confidence in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it's an interesting question with Bernie and AOC and Corbyn and all of these. I mean, social democrats calling themselves socialists.
Yeah.
What should our response be to that? Should it just be what it's been so far? Shouting, "No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not," seemingly to deaf ears, or should we use the word communist instead?
That could be one way of doing it, to be honest. I think, was it Zizek who said that the word socialism now has just become, it doesn't mean anything, really.
Yes.
Obviously it does mean stuff.
I mean, according to the dictionary it does, but colloquially...
according to the books. Yeah. But when you use it in Discord, you can say I'm a socialist, and you could just as well be wanting to invade a country, calling yourself a socialist.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a line to be drawn. Oh, what am I saying? Just blurting out cliches now. There is a line to be drawn. So,
mm-hmm. I mean,
when you want to obviously attract people, then you need all the help you can get. But when we say that, we also need to recognise that there's always going to be people who are going to be able to stand there and say, here are the views that we advocate. It's not the same as these other people. Because we do advocate something that is different, something that is more radical than simple mainstream. And there will always need to be that voice being heard. Do I think that we should use them? Yeah, I think we should. But I just need to really reassert this. Don't keep getting caught up and letting them take the side. It needs to be taken back from me. That's all I can really say on that matter right now, to be honest.
But what do you mean by take it back?
Oh, I don't know, I'm just bloating. I'm very tired today.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm sort of saying the discourse needs to be pushed in our favour. It shouldn't be us sort of delineating ourselves over to them.
Mm.
We need to take, we need to take the narrative. This just seems to be a video. This seems to be a theme I've noticed in my upcoming videos of taking back the narrative from the people who seek to make it or seek to deviate from it. It's this whole thing we have between left and right deviations.
Yeah.
Who holds the message? It needs to be there because at the end of the day, politics. I think I'll give a shout out to Red Chili in here. Politics is serious. It's not fun and games. We do need to eventually start getting our act together.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it is serious. Sort of what I've tried to do a little bit with my channel is make it not as serious. Like, I have meme videos and I have gaming videos and I do live streams where we, do stupid shit in city skylines. And every now and then we talk about politics. And because I noticed that I noticed that in a lot of like Let's Plays and other YouTube channels, they, most of the time they just do the gaming stuff. And then every now and then they mention something about politics, just offhandedly, just, hey, this is a thing, and they give their views on something. And it made me think that these people have millions of followers. And a lot of them, young people, impressionable people, who watch these guys daily. And just a tiny thing like that, it leaves a mark, I think. And people, generally speaking, don't want to watch 30-minute long videos about the labor theory of value. They want to watch things that are entertaining. Which, I mean, again, a little bit brings us back to the whole views thing, but I try to make my videos more accessible to people who don't necessarily care that much about political theory. They're just normal people, and sometimes they want to discuss politics. Which is why I never really cover topics that are super advanced, Marxism. I always talk about the very beginnings, and like you should be able to watch any of my videos without having ever done any other kind of research about Marxism or that kind of thing. It should all be like beginner friendly, because I'm trying to reach a broader audience.
Oh yeah, absolutely, sure. I mean, as long as you're honest, it's just your aesthetics. But again, it is that whole balancing act. I think it's all a matter of a balancing thing. It is whether or not that is soon going to, you look into the abyss and the abyss will look into you, and suddenly you're just nothing but just doing what you tried not to do in the first place. I think, what do I think? With doing sort of fun beginner stuff, a problem I kind of find at times is that we've already kind of done a lot of that, or at least we sort of don't go into much detail into that. And I think maybe it is the time really to start talking about more theory. I don't know if you necessarily disagree with that, but I think there does come a sort of time to come on. We can talk about the Berlin Wall, or we can talk about luxury space communism. We can stop talking about luxury space communism and start just talking about how the transition is going to go.
Yeah.
Maybe relating it back into people's lives is always good. I was just a talk a few months ago by the Revolutionary Communist Group in Britain, and they were talking a lot about he spoke a lot about the United Nations definition of anti-Semitism or whatever, and a guy in the audience was saying, like, no working class Liverpudlian cares about the definition of anti-Semitism. What we do care about Palestine. We'd have to relate these things into ways that people are going to care about.
Yes,
and that is definitely true. You shouldn't just allow me to turn into some ultra leftist.
there is a spectrum between making a communism 101 video where you talk about communism is not where the police break into your house and take your Xbox, and then also on the other side making a 7-hour long talk about commodity production.
Sure.
And somewhere in the middle there, I think, is where we should be heading.
I do quite like... have you watched Cuck Philosophy?
I have.
Cuck Philosophy's videos are very good, especially even his response videos, because he just goes balls to the wall and just delineating everything they say. But it's very entertaining to watch, and you can sit through 50 or an hour, a minute long. And also there's another smaller YouTuber that I want to give a shout out to called Forever Jameses, and he's done only two videos, very, very long and very in-depth, but again, very easy to listen to. And they're on cultural Marxism and race realism. So go check him out, Forever Jameses. These... Gone.
Oh, I just came to my mind the channel Exurb 1A, which is, I don't know if you've heard of it.
Let's have a look.
It's like a weird existentialist YouTube channel about nothing. Well, it's about the universe, kind of, and it's about physics, and it's about the philosophy of existence and being, and topics that to a lot of people might seem really boring and abstract and like stuff that you would sit at a college lecture for.
Yeah.
But he makes these really high production value, really visually interesting videos about these topics that they take you for a whole journey. The entire thing, it's you, and by the end your mind is blown. And I guess what I'm getting at is I just want to make videos that appeal to people that aren't like me, because I'm a nerd. I like reading long, stupid texts about theories and sociology and those that's not most people, and those aren't the people that I want to make my videos for. And I'm just trying to think of how do we appeal to people that say things like, oh well, I don't vote because I just don't know anything about politics, or I just don't care about politics, or I don't know anything about capitalism or socialism because I don't know how that affects any of me. Like, relating it to people's lives, like you said, is an example. But also, like, even then I think it's difficult. Even if you do try to connect it to people's lives, you're still talking about something that's like a bit abstract and a bit far away, almost.
Yeah. I would like, I actually wonder, to be honest, just if people, I don't know, at some point could just give a very short 208 characters or whatever of what the main reason was that led them into a socialist road. I don't know what mine was exactly. I think it had something probably to do with me trying to find something other than religion, to be honest. Because I was very religious back in the day, and then I sort of dropped all of that, went through a Ditchkins phase and started getting interested in politics. That was basically what happened with me, and then obviously I just sort of figured, well, yeah, I'll do a video about my political journey in the future. But yeah, I would like to understand how people got here, because then obviously you can use that information. That would be boon, really, if you could just sort of have a graph, something statistical to sort of
it would be interesting to have that data, yeah. Because maybe there's something to, if there's like a spark, if there's like a moment somewhere, maybe it can be seized. Get, you know, if there's just like that one thing that makes people think maybe socialism is an alternative. What is it?
And people, that's another thing. Like people have the idea that we need to stop talking about the dangerous stuff, the radioactive stuff. You know, of course, what I'm talking about, and that we need to sort of move away from that and just move on to other things. I think it's very good to think about the future. A lot of communists do find themselves in the hole of the past.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I sort of flirted with Maoism quite a lot, because it does seem a lot more interested in the future than just squabbling over the details in the past. But the past, at the same time, is something to talk about, because it's always what the opponents of socialism will come forward with, you know, with these things to talk about. And if it's wrong, then we need to just dispel those things. We can't, if we just say no, that's bad. But why do you think it's bad? Because then the whole reason for you saying it's bad, and we need to ignore that, is it's wrong. So we need to talk about those things. We're going to talk about them whether we like it or not.
Yeah, but I can't remember if it was you who said it in the latest video, or if it was another YouTuber. But something about socialists are always on the defensive. Was that you? That right wingers are always throwing stuff at us, and we're always the ones defending ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about it later in another video. I don't really say too much now.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah, well, we are. Yeah, sorry, I'm being corporate now. I prefer to just save a lot of that stuff for the future, really.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I can talk a bit.
Sorry.
Because as you said,
for a while.
with you know, the Berlin Wall and talking about the Soviet Union and that kind of thing, and it does feel like that is something that we spend a lot of time doing, is just answering right-wingers' questions instead of really putting ourselves forward and talking about what is it that we want. What actually would we do if we, you know, were put in charge? Because, I mean, obsessing over the past is one thing, but in a way we're sort of, like you said, sort of forced to obsess about the past because right-wingers are constantly bringing it up. And then when we defend ourselves...
my sort of feeling of it was that a lot of people tend to say yes, but they tend to say, oh, this thing about the National Republic of Jarikistan or whatever, and then people just say, yeah, that, but blah blah blah. I find I do, to be perfectly honest, find when you sort of present people with the information and how it actually conflicts with the real data and whatever, that can be definitely very influential in people changing their views. But then there's also the other thing of now thinking, okay, we've done that. Now we need to think about how we are going to build our stuff. Mm-hmm. It's really good when we talk about how we need to analyze the conditions and whatever. It's much harder to say, well, what are the conditions?
Yeah.
How do we actually do this?
A way to word it. I think there are leftist movements and organizations that have distanced themselves from the past, and who focus on the future instead, and who don't answer to, well, what about Stalin? What about this? But instead just brush those comments off and say, I mean, that's ridiculous. That's not what we're about. This is what we care about. The Left Party in Sweden is an example. Officially a socialist party, once upon a time a Euro-communist party, that did everything to distance themselves from everything the Soviet Union ever did, because that was the constant criticism that was hurled toward the left. Whenever the Soviet Union did anything, when they crushed the Hungary revolt or they invaded Afghanistan, that was always thrown back at the leftists in Sweden, even though they had nothing to do with it. And the Left Party was just sort of like, we have nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, they managed to not be on the defensive all the time, with right-wingers constantly accusing them of being Stalinists. But on the other hand, they're also divorcing themselves from their past and from their history.
I think that there must be some sort of correlation between doing that and sort of turning into sort of social democrats over time. Yeah, people do always want to sort of avoid those questions, but it's difficult for me to say, really.
The left has been growing in Europe, really around the world, sort of since the 2008 financial crisis, sort of ever since poverty has been increasing, the left has been growing, and in a few countries, the far left has been growing. The old Marxist-Leninists and the Maoist movements have been growing. In India, the Maoists and the Marxist-Leninists have been growing. In Nepal, they had a socialist revolution to put the communists in charge. But on the other hand, in Europe, we've mostly seen reformists and democratic socialists, social democracy getting an uptick, worker cooperatives, all of which is sort of a reaction to neoliberalism. And the old communist movements haven't really been growing at all.
No.
So socialism looks quite different today from how it did 20 years ago.
I mean, in Britain, there's just not really anything communist there. I mean, the Anarchist Federation split. The Anarchist Federation wasn't doing an enormous amount anyway. Obviously, it split last year because of what happened at the book fair with the old members versus the new members, or the older members versus the younger members. CPGBNL is just trash. Revolutionary Communist Group just feels quite old, at least from my experience in it. There isn't an enormous, and the original CBGB, they're sort of just more trade union trap kind of people.
Yeah.
And then if you look at America, all of the Maoist movements hate one another. Democratic Socialists of America are certainly growing. This is why I think it is important to use the words like socialist or communist, because people don't care about it as long as you just put it to them in the right way. I think that they're growing, but I again, it is that thing you said with like just the abstract idea of just worker control. Okay, well, what kind of worker control is it? I don't think people are asking themselves the questions, are they?
No.
Okay, how is democracy just going to be this slate of the workers will just own everything or whatever? How are these things going to work out? Is it going to be similar to how things are in Cuba, or say in the DDR, when the political parties were not competing against one another, but rather they were ways of bringing people who were like Catholics or they were ex-Nazis or whatever into the political domain, stuff like that. How is it going to work? And those are the questions that these people, I think, tend to fret away from. I think those are good questions to ask, to be honest, more than talking about Stalin or whatever. I think those are the questions that are going to affect us in the future. Yeah. But those things I find folks like DSA. Yeah, that person in the comment, DSA is too liberal. Mm-hmm. People can say they're talking about this Marxist stuff, and that's great. Ultimately, anything in the leftward direction is going to be good, but a lot of us don't have time for that, and a lot of us need to start moving towards the deeper shit, really.
Yeah. I mean, about the extent that most of these reformist democratic socialist parties go is in their party manifesto they put somewhere, deeply hidden in there. Yeah, capitalism is bad. We want socialism, and that's sort of the extent of it. Whereas instead they could be expanding that a bit, and talking about a hypothetical, quite a detailed system that they would like in the future.
Yeah.
Hammer out, really hammer out those details of what could an alternative to capitalism look like here, in this country, in this time period where we live right now.
But then is it not necessarily good to do that? Because then...
Sorry, you cut out a bit.
Oh, sorry. Is it too specific then to sort of talk about how it's going to look like? That's always the thing that I fear. If we're going to be saying socialism will look like this, or whatever, how do you get the revolution, whatever, and then there's that boundary between saying, well, you've got to apply it to your own conditions, being quite vague, and then on the other hand making a detailed analysis on whatever. And I don't know. It's difficult to sort of predict the future. I don't think we should. But at the same time, how do we do it?
How do we do it? That is the question that it all comes down to. So speaking of, the growing leftist movements in the world, speaking of, momentum in Britain and the Left Party in Sweden and the DSA.
Momentum is our answer to DSA, I think.
Yeah. What if we are, on the far left, really as far to the left as anyone can really get? Should we be the kind of people who say, no, these popular movements aren't good enough, they're not left-wing enough, and stay out of them? Or should we be joining them and trying to move them leftward? There's no answer to that question, obviously.
Right. Okay.
It's opinion, but...
Yeah. Wasn't there that quote from Lenin? Go wherever the masses are. Yeah, I mean, a lot of my friends actually, back in the anarchist groups in Bristol, would often sort of just tend to sort of move away, say, I'm going to join the Labour Party because I think it's going to be helpful or whatever. And you'd always find that happening, but it would be very rare that you'd find people momentum into the anarchist group or whatever. And I don't know.
Because really...
we're not a strong enough force to be able to do that in particular groups. And there isn't really. We've lost a lot of the history, obviously, because of years and years of Red Scaring. We've moved away from there. We're just a load of Trotskyist parties and stuff.
You can ask yourself the question, if you're a member of, the Communist Party of the Greatest Britain Revolutionary Marxist-Leninist Reconstruction League, and you have like 5 members, is anything gonna come from that?
Yeah, exactly.
But also, there's to quote, what's it called, Immortal Technique, when you try to change the system from within, it's usually the system that changes you.
Yeah, it's true. And then how do you do it from the outside?
Yeah, I mean, you can't try to influence, like, the Labour Party, for instance. You can't move the Labour Party leftward without being in the Labour Party. I mean, it would be incredibly difficult. There is the idea that under, like, parliamentary democracy, say, if, like, the Green Party gets big, then the Labour Party is going to be like, hey, how do we attract these Green Party voters? Maybe we'll take some of those policies and make the Labour Party more green, and then to try to attract more voters.
I think that just shows the just crapness of parliamentary democracies.
I mean, absolutely, yeah.
And the sort of the anarchist goal of moving towards sort of the local level and stuff, I don't feel has enough force to be able to do that from my experiences. So don't take it wrong, certainly aspects of it can be done, but I just feel it's self-limiting to limit yourself to those realms. We need to use whatever we can, and effectively in some ways, whether that's going to be done through insurrection or protracted methods, or I don't know, just building the old world. I just don't think the simple commune effort is effective enough to overcome the challenges that we affect. I think Zizek said it right. This is a whole international goal. We're not going to just simply be able to think simply about the local level.
Yeah. I mean, like the Zapata communes in Mexico, for example. They've just sort of been doing their thing for like 70 years.
Exactly.
Like they're not contributing to like the worldwide socialist movement in any way, really, which is sad to say because I like Zapata,
Yes.
But they're just sort of chilling now with no real ambitions.
Yeah, it is a problem because Zapatistas, that's true. They're not really the force to go for. They're great to look at. They're great to aspire towards of their methods and their principles.
Yeah.
Also the principles. But you do need to just understand after a while if you're using that as sort of an example of like, look at these guys. Okay, but that's great. But how on earth does that relate to my situation right now? I can't go up and live at the top of Ben Nevis, which is the tallest mountain in Britain, and start a commune up there. Yeah. I can't do that. That's not in any way material. Right? That obviously isn't an accurate description of the Zapatistas, but we can't just simply look at these things and think, that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
It needs to be for our liberation. It needs to be for our situations.
Speaking of communes, I don't know if you know too much about the ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus.
I've heard his name, but I don't really know anything about him.
He was kind of the philosophical forefather of communism, you could say.
Right.
He basically he lived in Athens and learned from, you know, the big philosophers, and they were talking about random shit like human described in the least amount of words is featherless biped and that kind of stuff. And Epicurus was like, okay, how is this important in any way? Like, why the fuck are we talking about this? And so Epicurus basically founded materialism, or philosophical materialism, where he was like the first person to theorize that the universe was made up of atoms, and like the universe wasn't created by God. He was, I mean, essentially an atheist. And he just went off to the outskirts of Athens and he just built a commune, which was kind of a school where people just came and lived. And like over the years, Epicurean thought became so influential that like hundreds of these communes were popping up all over the Mediterranean, until the Catholic Church came in and killed them all and converted the communes into churches.
Right.
But it's interesting that, like, on the one hand, yes, just starting a commune probably isn't going to do anything. On the other hand, if you're very charismatic, maybe you can inspire other people to do the same.
Sure. I mean, I'm not probably going to be the best leader, but I can definitely help in the skills that I have.
Yeah.
I think also something you bring up about sort of the Epicure saying, like, you know, what he was responding to, how the hell does that matter, anything like that. It's a similar thing to sort of the stuff I've been reading about recently, which is that there is a tendency, I briefly touched upon it in my last video, there is a tendency for people to sort of stretch communism beyond how it affects us today, to say, well, you know, actually communism sort of began with sort of like, it's sort of, you can find stuff there in Taoism, Epicureanism maybe, and stuff like that. But when we talk about communism, we talk about the history from, you know, the inception of capitalism, and communism is the synthesis of class struggle.
Yes.
So that's, yeah, a lot of people sort of got a bit confused with my last video, but it is basically, that's something I probably should have mentioned, you know, communism, I think, as it was stated by Marx himself, is not the situation in which you land. It's the what was it? I forgot the damn quote. The quote. Communism is not a state of things to be established. It's the state which removes the state of all things. You know, that will be established by what we do now, pretty much. So basically the synthesis of class struggle. And that is, if you I'm going to recommend this book again, but The Communist Necessity is definitely a good one to read, and talks specifically about this, about how we do need to focus on attaining those goals and putting forward that. Yeah.
Yes. Alexandrite on YouTube gives $2 and says, "Thank you both for your videos."
Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome. And earlier...
Maybe we should ask.
No, go ahead.
Maybe we should ask people in the chat if they've got any questions, because maybe we've...
Yes, if you have any questions, we can answer them.
Unless you had anything else to say, Zira. I'm just sort of mumbling at this point.
Another thing that I thought about was, is it worth trying to convert people that are like classical liberals, quote-unquote skeptics and ANCAPs, who are like truly dead set on those ideologies? I think you would be a good person to answer that, since you had a libertarian streak.
Yeah, I think, to be perfectly honest, a lot of folks are just sort of going to there because it's cool and hip. That's definitely the reason I did. You might think, well, how the hell can being grandpa be possibly cool? But it can, because you're constantly, especially when you're young, you're constantly in this sort of feeling that the world around you is being controlled by these liberals, or whatever. And so when you hear about Chicago in economics,
Yeah.
Austrian economics, it does feel revolutionary. I don't know if I am just an outside case, though. I know that there are some other people who could, but for me, it wasn't the foundation of my beliefs, I guess, if you really want me to be honest. It was more that I wanted some other way of doing things, and I noticed at the time that maybe this stuff is what can get us there.
Yeah.
So I don't know, really. I think should we? I would say, okay, I'm going to guess that maybe a lot of people will just grow out of this as time goes on. I feel we sort of debated with them for hours and hours about capitalism versus socialism and all that, but
Yeah.
It's reality that's going to test you at the end of the day. That's gonna have a lot more important than whatever I talk to you about, or however much I debate you or whatever. I think it's that that's going to inform whether or not you choose socialism or capitalism. And then you also need to sort of think about, well, even if even if this is true, are you even really worth it? Because there's so much more stuff I could be doing with my time, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And there might be far better people who are situated in their conditions to fighting for those goals.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it? Yeah,
That's something that I've thought about. I've consciously chosen to never get involved in YouTube drama or feuds between people.
Oh, yeah, you're a good one.
And I've also chosen to never make a response video, because or have any live debates with the people like Sargon or whatever. Because
it's for dark days.
what it's only ever gonna do is waste my time. And
yes.
the chances of me changing anyone's minds are quite slim, which is why I focus on educational content instead, especially that accessible by people who aren't that into politics and who are new to politics, because those are the people, I think, whose minds can be changed. Whereas, people who are dead set, libertarian skeptics, and who watch all of those channels daily, that you probably can't rub them. I mean, not without spending hours upon hours doing it.
No, absolutely. I also think it's just more than simply people who...
Sorry, you cut out again.
Oh, sorry. I don't think it's just whether or not you're interested in politics, but whether or not politics affects your life.
Yes.
As much as I can talk about politics all I want, does it come into my life that much in comparison to other people? No, I'm a straight white dude who came from upper lower middle class parents, and not much affects me in my social life apart from financial issues.
Yeah.
So that's not really, as much as I can want to be the key of the proletariat, I'm not, and I'm probably never gonna be.
Yeah.
Someone who is an immigrant, someone who is oppressed by their gender or whatever, they're going to have a lot more to talk about, and they're going to have a lot more that's going to affect them materially than ever will affect me. That's just the way it is. Yeah.
I get the question quite often, how do you convert a liberal? And the question that I always give is, talk to them as if they're just a human being. Take into account their beliefs, their background, their values, and build an argument based on that. Try to cater to them, and don't just use stock pre-prepared citations from Lenin or whatever.
Yeah.
Because everyone comes from different backgrounds and everyone values different things, and socialism and Marxism have answers to a lot of those things and a lot of those concerns, but you have to know which part of socialism to focus on, because
I guess as long as you, if there is, what am I saying? There's never going to be. I use like Metroid as an analogy. You can't complete Metroid by just going down this linear path. Sometimes you have to die and try again. Sometimes you have to backtrack. Sometimes you have to get more experience in it. You have to get more health points or whatever. You can never do it in just one particular way. And so as much as I like to sort of talk about how we need to reinforce communism and all that, I also understand that I never would... I might not have ever gotten into socialism if it had just been labelled to me as Stalin. That's true. But, so I would say that ultimately it's fine for me to say 4 years later we need to straightforward talk about communism. But I do also understand that when you want to get people onto the boat, you need to sort of maybe use a bit more less abrasive language.
Yeah.
And then over time people will make their own journeys as long as you just have that information there available to them and you can help them on their road.
Yeah, it's difficult.
But I'm shit with getting people into politics, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't have the answers.
It's a difficult... I mean, yeah, it's hard. It's not easy.
What are the questions
yes,
people are asking?
I was just scrolling up to take a few questions. Do you know about Earthstrike?
No, but it rings a bell.
It's a general strike for the environment that's supposed to be going on.
Right.
I don't know. Just
I haven't heard about that.
someone has been asking that over and over again, so I thought I'd bring it up.
I'm not too sure, to be perfectly honest with you. What can I say?
Thoughts on music or art as a tool for socialism?
I'm sorry, I don't really have much knowledge in terms of like permaculture and environmentalism in the left. That's probably something I should do more on. What was the question? Sorry.
Music or art
Music and
as a
arts.
tool for socialism?
As a tool for socialism. Yeah, I mean, there's this thought of mine of like creating that sort of mass culture, creating the sort of culture which really benefits you. You can see that in works like Sorry to Bother You and stuff. It's a movie that doesn't just focus primarily on you see movies done about things in the past like the Black Panthers or whatever, and they're always sanitized.
Mm-hmm.
And something like Sorry to Bother You really does just showcase you don't need to do it like that. You can actually create a movie that calls you to action and doesn't showcase itself or anything. I think it can be very, very useful, especially how Boots Riley went about doing it. Boots Riley's a proper, pro-China communist, and he's created this movie that just about anyone can really get interested in.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, definitely. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, art is propaganda, essentially. I mean, even if it's not intended to be, it is, because the creator has inherent biases, and they have a perspective of the world, and they have thoughts and ideas and beliefs, and that goes into whatever they create. And so, in that way, in a very mushy way, all art that is created by someone who is a socialist is socialist art, even if it's not explicitly so. And
yes.
Just, I mean, media and like movies and shows and comics, and it all has a huge influence on people's thoughts about topics. Like there's the new Netflix series or movie, I don't know, called Trotsky, which is...
Yeah, I saw that briefly. I didn't watch it, saw it.
Yeah. I've no idea if it's good or not, but just that kind of thing where it's like, oh, it's something on the front page of Netflix about, Marx, Lenin, Trotsky, and Stalin, and socialism.
Hopefully, if it's not that bloody Russian Revolution Netflix documentary, bloody awful.
Never seen it. But
it's awful.
The point is like, depending on how that is angled, how that is biased, because it will be biased in one way or the other. Depending on the bias of that show or movie, I don't know which one it is, it will affect people's views on Trotsky and on Lenin and on Stalin and on socialism as a whole. So art and music and all of that definitely has a huge impact on general consciousness.
There is no such thing as bloody blah.
What? Sorry?
Emotions or whatever. That quote from Mao, which was, there's no such thing as apathy, will influence one way or another by various factors. There's pro-worker art, there's non-pro-worker art and stuff like that. Yes. Even, Dalton Trumbo, of course, everyone likes to talk about Dalton Trumbo, especially from the movie that was released about him.
Mm-hmm.
What he was a bloody communist, as far as I was aware. He was at least pro-socialism. And what is the movie talk about? It makes it this thing about freedom of speech or whatever.
Yeah.
And Dalton Trumbo, if you look into him, was completely no on freedom of speech. He was like, if this movie does not represent the working people, like on the waterfront or whatever, it should be opposed. And you see the movie, and there's nothing of that in there. It's just been sanitized. So,
I mean, that's Hollywood.
That is Hollywood.
and Hollywood is political. Like, very much so. Like, Hollywood is always used to instill views that support the status quo. I mean, just look at fucking American Sniper as a horrible example.
Oh, yeah.
That depicts the war in the Middle East as this heroic thing where everyone that's brown is a terrorist. And I mean, as much backlash as that movie got, like it made a whole bunch of money at the box office, and a lot of people loved it. And
even if it wasn't explicit.
Yeah. This is a pretty good question from where'd it go? Shit, where'd it go? Damn, things scrolled up. Here it is, from Communist for Cohesion. What should I read by Marx? I'm a busy man.
Ooh.
And it's interesting because this is actually something that both Marx and Engels were fully aware of. That a lot of socialists at the time were writing these, Das Kapital size works, like giant works about economics and philosophy, and the only people who were reading that were academics and petite bourgeois intellectuals. But socialism was supposed to be a movement by and for the workers. And, the working class isn't going to sift through Das Kapital on their way to work, So they wrote a few pamphlets-ish, like very thin little books that people could like carry on their way to work and read in the factory. And those are Value, Price and Profit and Wage, Labor and Capital.
Yes.
Are two of the good ones that are short and to the point, essentially.
Yeah. It is also good whenever you read anything that within the society that it came from. It's not, you can't just like, probably the number one cause of brocialism, isn't it? It's just when people just sort of think, this is all that matters. But it was written during the Industrial Revolution and so forth. Society has changed since then. Our attitudes have changed and so forth. So you need to read Marx. I think it's the way you read Marx as opposed to simply what you read from Marx.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think someone said in the chat actually earlier that Marxism isn't supposed to be dogmatic. You're not supposed to take the words of Marx and Engels as gospel and see anything that opposes it as blasphemy.
Yeah,
But rather, like the methods of analysis of looking at the world is the important point. The conclusions drawn by them obviously differs from today's world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it was that other quote by now. There's so many quotes like them, and I haven't even read the quotation. But it's like we don't agree with Marx like some prophet. We agree with Marx based on what he has predicted, effectively, or what has come out of what he said. You know, does the economy match up to what he says? That's what we agree with him on. He probably said a million things that were wrong. We don't care about that.
Yes, absolutely. Like, for instance, he said that England would be the first socialist nation.
Exactly. He said Russia would be the last.
Essentially, yeah.
So
the least developed nations would be the last to become socialist, when in reality it was sort of the opposite.
Exactly, yeah.
But then, to Marx's credit, he couldn't predict World War One.
Right. He couldn't predict rise of fascism either. What's that person who said something about MLM?
Yes. Do you have any criticism or thoughts on MLM?
I think that that's probably something I know a bit more about. MLM is I think I like a lot of stuff in there, to be perfectly honest with you. I just worry about whether or not it can. I think it's just that other thing of self-limitation. I wouldn't really hold MLM up to much standards if it was simply in America and so forth, with just people just fighting over one another. But MLM is the number one fighter in revolutions around the world today, and whether that's India, it was in Nepal, Turkey, it was in Peru, it is now in the Philippines, so forth like that. It is the number one sort of actively fighting force. The question I have is whether or not it is, to be perfectly honest, being too limiting and saying, actually, no, there's no existing socialism in the world. These places like Cuba are good to support, but they're not supportive of that. And then I also just find that there are people who tend to just go around all the time sort of saying, oh, that's just revisionist, or oh, that's just too dogmatic, man.
Yeah.
And I also wonder how much justify with like the bad things that have been carried out by parties. But then somebody who's pro-China will say that's fine. That's another thing I find. Like, if you support their theory, it doesn't really matter what they do to a large extent. If you support China, you don't give a shit about whether or not Maoists are getting their bookshops closed or whatever. So.
It's interesting. My personal view of MLM. I mean, as you said, it's sort of those are the people who are fighting right now in the Philippines and in Peru and in India, and like those are the people who are actively trying. But also a lot of, I guess, first world MLMs are just very sure about themselves. They describe MLM as like the latest development in Marxism, and everything else is just plain wrong. And they are quite similar to left communists in that way.
I do think there is a sort of good point in there, though. Like, science should be that constantly evolving thing, and there are some things that are better than others. I think some people say that like Marx is wrong. It's just the equivalent of pushing a cart with a horse when you've got a car available. That's what someone said about it.
Yeah.
You don't think of it.
But also, MLM has taken Marxism in a certain direction. Like, yes, it has developed Marxism, but it has developed Marxism in one way. Regular Marxism has also been developed in a different way. Like, just because you are an orthodox Marxist, as I am, doesn't mean that I think the world is still stuck in the Industrial Revolution.
Hmm.
And like, you don't have to go through Lenin in order to get to the 21st century. That's just my thoughts on it.
I think that sort of like Lenin does represent a good point now, because the stage of capitalism has changed so much that it's I don't exactly know what your sort of groundwork would be if you call yourself an orthodox Marxist, but the idea of especially anti-imperialism is second to none nowadays. You need the anti-imperialism there to solve the imperialist question, just like you need socialism to solve the capitalist question, feminism to solve the misogynist question, etc. So there is that there, I think, that is sort of necessary. But I don't know what your exact views are as an orthodox Marxist.
No, and then that's not something we need to go into right now.
Right, okay, yeah. This is going on a bit.
Ghost of Karl Marx 69 gives $5 and says, what do you think of the argument the socialist state will never dismantle itself and in some cases reverts to capitalism, so we should abandon it? Essentially, what's your view on socialist states?
Socialist states. I think that whether or not you like it or not, something will up.
You keep cutting out.
Oh god damn it. Bloody northern internet connection.
Yeah.
I think you need to understand the way in which a state forms, really. You can't just... I don't know how to answer these questions. I'll be perfectly honest. You're probably better do it.
I mean, it's a legitimate argument, I think, and it should never be dismissed. I think anarchists in that way serve a very useful purpose. Even I'm not an anarchist and I disagree with anarchists, but I think anarchists tend to be better at criticizing people who are getting too authoritarian.
Yeah, sure.
And like, Marxists tend to, when analyzing a society and analyzing how free it is, they tend to look at, okay, well, which class is in charge? Is it the bourgeoisie or is it the proletariat? If the proletariat is in charge, then it's, a free libertarian state. It's awesome. It's,
Sure.
the freest it could be. Whereas an anarchist would look at it and say, who is in charge? It's like, yes, you could yes, it's a dictatorship of the proletariat. The bourgeoisie isn't in charge, but who controls the state apparatus?
I find, yeah, sorry, I've got my thoughts together now. So a lot of my old friends, the idea of power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Mm.
That view, I think, is personally a bit too simplistic, because it's not so much about the power itself, but about the interests that it serves. And I think that is sort of true in the Marxist analysis. It is okay. Well, who is in charge? What is the economy serving?
Mm-hmm.
I think that does serve itself quite well.
Yes.
Because you can just say like, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Well,
but I don't know.
I do think that there is the point that just a single individual having too much power doesn't necessarily corrupt them, but it's just ineffective. Like, to have, just the great comrade general secretary take care of everything, even if he does it in tries to do it in the interest of the people, he's gonna fuck something up eventually. He's just a human being,
Yeah, you do need to just remember, there are people at the end of the day.
Mm. And I mean, that's something that Cuba is doing at the moment with their constitutional amendments. Is they're taking the role of president and they're splitting it into two parts. So they're going to have a
Right.
prime minister now for the first time since like the 50s.
Right, okay.
Because they, in their views, they don't want any one person to have too much power.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, exactly. That's the stuff you don't hear about from Cuba.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus,
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff you hear.
No one
you don't hear a
knows
lot
that
about Cuba, really.
Yeah, I just found out today that the DDR, when they made their second constitution, or updated their constitution, they held millions of discussion groups throughout the country and how it should be formed and so forth. So you don't really hear about that much.
Yeah, Cuba's done the same thing since for a few months now.
Yeah.
Over 90% of all of the adults on Cuba have taken part in broad discussion meetings and talked about what the new constitution should be.
Yeah, it's just stuff you do not hear about. And I think that when you can look at that, and it gives you confidence that actually stuff is working towards that democratic process. And it isn't just as simple as the stuff you've been hearing about of like, oh, it's bad because it's a state and so forth. Some people need states. Palestine needs state. Sorry. And as much as, yes, ultimately get rid of states, I think that does eventually present itself a good criticism, to be honest, because some folks on Twitter do tend to be a bit like, actually, yeah, I kind of like a state sort of thing, at least in the expressions they give forth. And it's like, no, eventually we do need to understand they are just going to have to be a temporary situation to think about how we move from that. That was something I don't think that ever got solved throughout the 20th century. And yeah, I would say, as much as I have my disagreements with anarchists, yes, I think that we should actually ask that question a bit more. But it's probably going to be hard when you've got so much opposition around you.
Sure. I mean, yes, in a world that's dominated by capitalism, and especially by the United States as the sole superpower, it's going to be very difficult to dismantle a state, and I think it would be ill-advised to do that. States exist
to serve a purpose.
To serve a purpose, and they exist during certain circumstances. And when there isn't a need for a state anymore, then's the time to be rid of it.
That's to remove all the contradictions that are in there. A stateless society is less able to defend itself against foreign invasion and bourgeois influence. Yeah, I suppose there's still debate to be had on that sometimes. I suppose it also depends. Well, yeah, I think Peter Gelderloos said that based on his experience, states are good at attacking other places, but state. I don't know how much of his experience is there. That's the other thing with the communism needs to be based in the 1800s analysis, but he says that the stateless societies are better at defending themselves, or decentralized societies, or whatever. I think whether or not it's centralized or decentralized, it still ultimately represents a state. Where Java represents a state, whether you like it or not.
I mean, you can decentralize the state how much you want, but at the end of the day, it's still a state.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose there might be some semantic differences.
Yes, sure.
Yeah. You can't just get away from the fact that you are. I just find it's just literary quibble at the end of the day.
It's a bit my feelings toward the whole individualism and collectivism debate. I just feel like, what's the point? Why are we even talking about this? Why does it matter so much?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, isn't a collective made up of individuals?
Well, precisely. It's just also just a question you could only imagine coming up, like in the internet or in middle class discussion groups. It's like
sociology paper exam or something.
Yeah, if you're an oppressed trans woman, why you care? Okay, you want your fucking life to be acknowledged. Why do you care about individualism or collectivism all the time?
Yeah. It's really just academic discourse.
Yeah, exactly.
And which, kind of neatly ties into the beginning of this talk, which is how do we talk about relevant topics and how do we relate socialism back to people's lives?
Exactly.
I think don't hold debates on collectivism versus individualism.
No, exactly.
Because you're not going to attract any new people doing that, I don't think.
No, it's just people wanking off, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think we should probably try wrapping it up in the next few minutes.
Yes.
Getting on with it. Sorry if my responses to the state weren't sufficient enough for the question. I just I'm not in a. It's been a pretty eventful. I don't really have my thoughts in my head properly.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah. Any more
Um,
questions?
There's one person that's been asking us for our opinion on the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth,
Oh,
basically the entire stream.
All that I know about players than Total War. That's it.
Yeah. No, I don't. I know nothing.
Sorry.
It was a thing. It was pretty large. It was a pretty big empire.
Disappeared.
I don't know. What do Polish and Lithuanian people think of it? Do they want to be back together? I think that's all that matters to me. That's why, when people ask my opinion on Northern Ireland and if it should be a part of the Republic of Ireland, I always just say, well, fucking let them decide.
There was a really awkward moment once where I was working at a hotel. Oh, you're from Ireland? Yeah. And I accidentally slipped and said, are you from Northern Ireland or Real Ireland? It's good I didn't ask them the next question, which would be, right, are you no surrender or up the RA? So, no. But that was a bit of... Luckily, I don't think he realised I said that, so he was just like, yeah. That was a funny one.
Yeah. AJ Swain says, both of you please actually read Marx.
Fair point. It's hard to do when you work 5 days a week, or if you don't work and you're really precarious about what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's true. I am intending on reading the entire works of Marx this year.
The entire works
Well,
of Marx.
no, okay. Let's say all of the books you said just a second ago.
Yeah.
Not read Capital or anything like that. Maybe I will. Who knows?
Read the first chapter of each of them. Read the first chapter of Capital Volume 1, and then Volume 2, and then Volume 3.
Oh, well, the chapters are always boring. First chapter.
Well, I mean, at least for Marx, he kind of tends to put the summary at the beginning.
Right.
So it's a bit like reading the last page, where he kind of summarizes the whole thing in the first chapter. You get kind of the gist of what he's going to talk about.
Mm.
That's my tip. My tip to you.
Okay. Yeah, I'll bear that in mind anyway. So. I think someone just asked, what about a race space?
Yeah, that's a weird question. That
I wonder how much of the sort of this race discussion is very American.
Yeah, it's a very American thing.
Yeah. In the UK, the race sort of question is not as integral, probably because we didn't have slavery. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still there, especially in South Asian populations, but
No.
as far as I was aware, and I'm probably wrong on this, there isn't sort of as much of that as there is in, say, America. The whole sort of race war discussion. I would say that I think black people should ultimately, in America at least, and native people and Latino people are probably going to be the best people when it comes to being ahead of the revolution. But the whole sort of race war thing is just it's silly.
I mean, the whole race war scenario just feels like a white nationalist wet dream more than anything that could ever actually happen.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, I'm not American. I don't know. That was a weird question.
Very weird.
I think we're just about gonna wrap it up.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks to everyone who came to listen to us ramble about random topics. Thanks to everyone who donated to the stream.
Thank you, guys.
Probably got at least $10.
Woo.
I could. Well, I mean, that's a bit. I had to pay like $50 for this mouse that I bought because I spilled grape juice on the old one. So.
Well, hopefully you've made some part of it. Maybe you can get some of the. If you ask for it. Training that.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Thanks for having me on. It's great.
Yeah. Let's do something else sometime.
Yeah, sure. No problem. All right. Bye.
Goodbye. Pirate Alex, will this video be left up? Yes, this stream will be left on the YouTubes, so you will be able to watch it forever. Mikael, who says I missed the whole stream, you will be able to watch it back. That's no problem. I might make I probably won't make like a highlights thing. I'll just leave the stream as it is, and you can watch it in its entirety. It's not that long. It's only, how long have we been streaming for? An hour and 30 minutes. That's fine. 37 minutes. That's fine. You can listen to that. That's like a podcast. May I ask, when's your next videos? Don't know. Hopefully soon. Alright. Goodbye, everyone. Have a good one.